Welcome one and all to another episode here at the Damage Report. I am John Iadarola. That's old hat. Every day it's pretty much John Iadarola. But not every day do we have streamer and contributor to the breakdown. Miranda Scholl, welcome back to the show.
Hi, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you here. I don't know if you or the audience can hear, but like right as I was introducing you, I heard what sounded like a jackhammer against the side of the building. So there's all sorts of work being done. I don't know what's going on, but I am very glad to have you here. What have you been working on recently on the breakdown?
Yeah, absolutely. So we just published a video, I think today. So you'll be surprised. It's not a topic I talk about very often, but Richard Dreyfuss, the actor, has thoughts on the new inclusion standards in order to win Best Picture at the Academy Awards, and it'll shock you.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that because I do constantly talk about Richard Dreyfuss on the show, and so I feel like my beat should
almost every day
incorporate this. Anyway, yeah, well, that's awesome. Everyone go check that out on the breakdown. You can follow the breakdown and see a number of different contributors, of which Miranda is one. That said, we have a lot that we're gonna be talking about here on the show today, and it's really a show of two parts. Those of you on the linear platforms, those of you listening to the podcast, you're going to get what you should probably be able to expect at this point, an awesome hour of the news. We're gonna be talking about a lot of different stuff, including some of the recent like judicial updates when it comes to access to abortion. George Santos, remember, like on the verge of being voted out. How did that go? Maybe he was voted out and you just haven't heard it yet. You won't know until you stay tuned, I guess. And then a whole lot more. There's a really interesting theory as to why Dianne Feinstein isn't stepping down, isn't being pressured to step down. And big updates on the presidential aspirations of old Puddin' Fingers himself, Ron DeSantis. But then in the aftermath, we're to be doing a TDR special feature on the AR-15, diving into the history, the legal status, basically everything interesting that you need to know about the AR-15, which is of course an important topic because it is an incredibly popular gun amongst Republican congresspeople and domestic terrorists. They have that shared interest and we're gonna dive into it. But if you're on the linear platforms or on the podcast, you're not gonna see that. So I guess you're gonna have to go to the YouTube channel and subscribe and then you can watch it and you'll have a lot of fun. Anyway, along the way, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, sharing the stream so that people know we're live, that would be great. And if you wanna send us any comments, tweets, or super chats, we'll respond to those as we go. But with all that said, Miranda, you ready to start the show?
Oh, I'm so ready.
Okay, well, let's do this thing then. The legal challenges to medication abortion continue, and we've got some pretty significant updates on them. There was a big hearing on Wednesday, and the most important fact you need to know so that you can sort of try to figure out how this is gonna go is that the venue for that hearing was the ultra-conservative Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. It's considered one of the most conservative in the country. It's consistently ruled against the DOJ under the Biden administration. All three judges are Republican appointees, but I don't know why that matters. Why are we mentioning that? Because judges are not like regular political actors like you and I. They're legal angels flapping above all of the muck of politics and just casting down divine judgments. No, they're political actors, and some of them are pretty obvious about it. So the case that they're considering right now involves an argument that the FDA was wrong to have approved the abortion drug mifepristone back in the year 2000 under the regulatory pathwork that it did, because as they argue, it was classified pregnancy as an illness, and it's not an illness. And so because of that word choice thing, this drug that has been proven over the course of decades in this country and in nearly 200 countries around the world to be incredibly safe and reliable should just be banned. That's their argument. It's a word choice thing. It's not a convincing word choice thing because one of the lawyers for the manufacturers of the pill says that the FDA uses the words illness, condition, and disease interchangeably. So it's wrong to say that the agency was calling pregnancy an illness. It would, under this definition, be a condition, which I think we can all agree it is. And at the end of the day, what does it matter which word you use? I think the FDA knew what pregnancy was at that point, but they believe that this is all that should be required to get these conservative judges to overturn it. And considering who the judges are and what they've said in the past, they might actually be onto something. Judge James Ho, who we broke down earlier in the week, said, is pregnancy a serious illness? When we celebrated Mother's Day, were we celebrating illness? which is a thing, like I said, that Judge Ho said. It could have also been something from the monologue of Jesse Waters about this story. It's exactly the same sort of thing from the exact same sort of political actor. But this is just to prep you for what is likely to be a really harsh reception for those who want this pill to continue to be allowed. We have more details, we'll get to those. But Miranda, what do you think about this?
I think that it's not surprising, but it is disappointing to see someone try to use semantics as a way to further take away any of women's rights, and the fact that illness, condition, and disease are used interchangeably. But we have to ignore that and then bring up celebrating the illness of Mother's Day is as laughable as it is a despicable argument that I feel like does not belong in a court.
Yeah, well, one would hope. Probably wouldn't get you far in many courts, but they, of course, as you know, this is common, not just on the right, they have very selectively chosen the path that they think is going to be best for them. It doesn't, and by the way, we're gonna give you more like bad news, I guess. It doesn't mean that they're gonna win. Like here, they're almost certainly gonna win. But the Supreme Court, they made like a little move, like I think 2 weeks ago, that seemed to imply that they might not be ready to outright ban this because that's bananas. So we might, in the end, see reason win out, but we have a tough road for the next couple steps at least. Judge Jennifer Elrod decided to repeat the anti-abortion claim that mifepristone affects the quote nutrition of the embryo or fetus, saying that it's a synthetic steroid that blocks the hormone progesterone, halts nutrition, and ultimately starves the unborn human until death. The fact that she and the other conservative judges in the court are constantly using terms like person or unborn human and all that, they're anti-abortion activists. That's all they are. They happen to wear black robes. But other than that, they've bought into all of the arguments, so that's what you could expect. They did indicate at one point, and I guess this is the good news that we have for you, that they are considering the DOJ's arguments that the challengers are time barred from challenging the drug, the approval by the FDA, because it happened 23 years ago. That seems reasonable. I mean, I would say the fact that it was 23 years ago seems less important than the fact that it has been demonstrated to be one of the safest, most reliable drugs on the market, far more safe. And by that, I mean less likely to cause serious side effects than the sort of drugs that are probably in your medicine cabinet right now. And that is not just our experience. It is available basically everywhere where reason reigns in the world. But we'll see if that's actually convincing to them. Any more thoughts, Miranda, before we move on?
Yeah, it goes to show that it's never about what they say it's about. You know what I mean? It's about pro-life, and they have to use words like unborn human and fetus. But I just did a video the other day about the lies that they spread about abortion and the use of the word infanticide. It is a fetus, and even when there are complications, they're arguing for reasons to not help the mother, even when if it's could be a possible miscarriage, if there are complications. So it's not about what they say it's about ever. And like you said, they're just activists in black robes.
Yeah, and so Trump recently said that it's become very common on the right to claim that the Democrats want abortion up to the 9th month and maybe even later, which obviously is ridiculous. No prominent politician, no prominent anything is calling for that. And that matters, that they would tell a lie so ridiculous as that. Because if they genuinely believed that what is actually being discussed is horrendous and radical, why would they go to the trouble of making up something that isn't true? They don't actually think that they've got a winner of an argument, thus they have to lie. They know how radical they seem. They've seen the electoral consequences of all of that already, and they're incredibly worried about the electoral consequences to come in 2024. And so their only strategy is to try to invent a Democratic Party and a reproductive rights movement that is seen as radical as they are. That's gonna be difficult because it's not true. But hey, with AI like voice replacement and all that, maybe they can come up with some quotes that sound as bad as the stuff that routinely comes out of their own mouth. That said, considering all of the moves that we've seen amongst conservatives in America's judiciary, particularly the SCOTUS, you're probably not surprised to find out that like confidence in the Supreme Court, belief that it's qualified to do the job it's supposed to do, has sunk to the lowest point in 50 years. Take a look at this chart. And it shows you going all the way back to 1973, coincidentally, basically the time in which the Constitution has guaranteed the right to an abortion. And you can see that the percentage of Americans that have hardly any confidence in the Supreme Court has absolutely shot up since 2018. A slightly steeper curve over the last year or so. God only knows what the 2023 numbers are gonna be once you really factor in the Dobbs decision. But that has shot up. A great deal of confidence is at 18%. That's like random chance at that point. It doesn't really represent much. I assume that's the 18% of the country that is richest, that knows the Supreme Court at the end of the day is gonna defend their interests. And they're like, yeah, I got that. I don't care what they do with abortion as long as they make sure that my taxes don't go up. And that's like the broad population. Once you dig in, it's even worse. Just 12% of women say that they have a great deal of confidence in the court in 2022, down from 22% a year earlier, 32% in 2018. That is a massive drop. That's like Kirsten Sinema constituent drop of approval right there. Democrats was down to fell to 8% in 2022 from 25% a year earlier. Amazing that in 2022, 1/4 Democrats still had a great deal of confidence in the Supreme Court. I would love to point out that while we are rightly giving a lot of focus to the SCOTUS's decisions as they intersect with the topic of abortion, it's not like they were awesome before that. On labor, on guns, on environmental regulation, pick a topic, they were suspect at best, but glad that the Dobbs decision woke up a bunch of these Democrats at the very least. So anyway, this is a massive crisis for the Supreme Court, a crisis of legitimacy, but that crisis only matters, Miranda, if legitimacy matters. Does the Supreme Court actually care whether people have any confidence in them, or do they only care that they're not being deposed and that they still have their lifetime appointments, they can still protect the interests of the wealthiest people in the country? I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't think they care at all what their approval rating is with the general public, because they've shown time and time again that nothing they do, even in the past couple of years especially, is for the public. They only care about getting in, protecting their own interests, protecting their friends' interests so that their friends can protect their own interests. And it's this vicious cycle. I think that they're trying to hit the 0% mark as fast as they can. They're doing a fantastic job, really reaching those goals ahead of time. But yeah, I don't think they care much at all. I think they may purport to care in the public eye. They may say we're working hard to gain trust back, anything like that. But they really don't care what you have to say because they have all the power already, and they're there to hold all the power.
Yeah, I mean, we're rapidly reaching a point where their only hope of registering a non-zero number is if they happen to get Harlan Crow in the sample. And I bring that up because, of course, their positions on policy are obviously influencing this, and I would assume that Dobbs is the single largest chunk of the fall in approval. But wait until people have had a multi-month reminder of how fundamentally corrupt the Supreme Court is. That's gonna hurt the numbers quite a bit too, or at the very least, I would hope that it would. In any event, we are gonna have to move on to our B block though. We had a few other updates, perhaps we can incorporate them into tomorrow's show. But there are other updates when it comes to the future of another corrupt individual. Why don't we jump into this?
I continue to address you guys because there's a deranged member here, so I'm gonna watch.
There you have Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez telling George Santos basically what the vast majority of the country would tell him if given the opportunity. You gotta go, man. You gotta go. We're done with this. Like, you're gonna drag this out for a few more months. Just go. Just leave. Go con yokels or something off somewhere. We're not interested in this. But that doesn't mean that AOC is gonna get what she wants, at least not immediately. And also, by the way, that wasn't even the only contentious interaction off on the Capitol steps. Take a look at what happened between Marjorie Greene and Jamal Bowman.
Expel him. We gotta save the party. The party's hanging by a thread.
We gotta get rid of Biden to save the country.
The party's hanging by a thread. You gotta save the party. Listen, no more QAnon. No more MAGA.
No more CNN.
No more debt ceiling nonsense.
Oh, you sadly listened before. Hey, let me tell you something, Jamal.
I need you to
Not
save
very
the party.
smart. You should pay attention.
Okay, so it was cut off a little bit at the end, but AOC also took Jamal Bowman by the arm and pulled him away saying she ain't worth it, which is truer words never spoken. But anyway, look, that was a contentious interaction between Representative Bowman and Representative Green, with Green trying to get a group of reporters to chant impeach Biden. No one repeated it. That wasn't surprising, by the way. I don't know what she thought her crowd was. She also ended that interaction, by the way, by saying, "You're not intelligent." There's nothing I love more than a white woman from the South telling a black man that he's not intelligent because he disagrees with her. But anyway, in her defense, she's obviously a genius. So if anyone's gonna be an arbiter of intelligence, it should probably be Marjorie Greene. What you didn't see in that video, by the way, Miranda, was that she later did a little mini press conference or whatever to say that he was physically threatening her, that he was imposing and he was yelling. They were both yelling. That's what they were doing. I don't know if Marjorie Greene has ever spoken without it being a yell. I've seen no video evidence to prove that. They were both screaming. Look, if you think that that was a pointless interaction, I'm right there with you. If you think there was no reason for it to happen, that like it makes both of them not necessarily look great, then you can say that. But she said that he was physically imposing and threatening. And then she said, I talked about this in the pre-show, that he called her a white supremacist, and that deeply offended her. And calling her a white supremacist is the same thing as calling a black person the N-word, which should never happen, she added. I'm glad that she was willing to add on that little lie, but she doesn't actually believe. But Miranda, what do you think about this little spotlight on Marjorie Greene?
There is so much going on in this story. So Marjorie Taylor Greene is like the worst person you've ever met ordering at a bar. And she asks you if you've had your drinks. And if you answer yes, she tells you that you shouldn't be at the bar anymore to make space for everybody else. And then complains to the person serving the drinks she can't read the menu because it's too dark in here and why is it so loud? And if I was stuck in a room with someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Jamal Brown, I would find her the more threatening of the two people, hands down, any day.
Definitely.
And I do think this interaction, you're right, it was kind of pointless. And I was like, oh, honey, why are you bothering to try? I mean, it's sweet that you think you can get through to someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene. It made you look both a little sad, to be honest, for me. But to say that she felt threatened by him when I didn't get an inkling of threat from that interaction whatsoever. And to say that calling her a white supremacist is as bad as calling a black person the N-word, you know how I know one of those is worse? Because we'll say white supremacist and you won't say the N-word. That's how I know one is definitely worse than the other. I'm not, again, I'm not shocked by her behavior or the fact that she said any of these things. Still disappointing every time.
100%. Yeah, and I will remind the audience, if you're not familiar with these classic videos, but so far as I have seen, Jamal Bowman has not traveled to DC to literally stalk the survivor of a mass shooting and follow him as he goes down the street yelling at him. Never seen Jamal Bowman do that. I've in fact never seen Jamal Bowman wander the halls of Congress as a visitor and then crouch down next to the mail slot and then say, hey, why don't you come out here? That was Marjorie Greene that did that incredibly threatening and deeply weird thing. Jamal Bowman has never done anything like that. I've never seen Jamal Bowman not smile. I've literally never seen him where he was not smiling, where he was not trying to speak in an uplifting fashion and all that stuff. Which the only reason I mention that is there is nothing that a person like Jamal Bowman could do that would not get a person like Marjorie Greene to say he's threatening, because it's not about what he's doing. It's about who he is. Either she is lying, which I definitely believe, and she just thinks that it's convenient to say that she finds people find black men to be intimidating or threatening or whatever, or she actually believes it because again, it's irrelevant what he does. It is who he is that is so inherently threatening to her. I don't care in this case whether she's lying or not. It sucks either way. But that said, let's put Marjorie Greene to the side and focus on another horrible person. Representative George Santos was, against all odds, not actually forced to resign in the vote that took place just yesterday. What happened was the Republicans voted in lockstep to refer the call for him to resign to the Ethics Committee, which technically gives it more room to potentially something to happen, but it effectively kills it for right now. He's not going to be forced to resign. Now, many of the Republicans who have called for him to resign still voted for this. They did not vote for him to resign, and they say it's because you're innocent until proven guilty. The ethics committee should be involved. And all of those arguments are on their face, I guess, perfectly acceptable and reasonable. But I also know that these people are they do not want to be on record as having voted a member of their party out, because that would make the party and them look bad. And they love the idea that even if the ethics committee does say that he should leave, and there's no guarantee of that will take months. And that will be months not only where we're stuck with George Santos, but where the Republicans have a slightly larger margin than they do right now. They'll have 5 instead of 4. What do you think?
I think that it was really funny to see quite a few Republicans that were all about publicly getting rid of George Santos, get him out of here, out with Santos. And then, and when it came down to it, no, don't actually do that. Don't actually do that. And I think it's because if you have to out someone for criminal activity and being bad at their job and being corrupt, that sets a precedent that other people in your party can then, be removed from their job for being criminal and being corrupt, which they all are. And so I think they definitely don't want that. And they don't want to be seen as liking George Santos or on his side, but they definitely don't want him removed, because then, well, where does that lead,
Yeah, I gave them the advice on yesterday's show that in theory, they could turn on George Santos as a way to put more pressure on Joe Biden by saying, we have this commitment to weeding out corruption that the Democrats don't have. But I knew that they weren't going to do that. If there's ever a choice between doing something that is ideologically consistent, that would broaden your appeal to more people, but would provide a little bit of cognitive dissonance to your base, or on the other hand, you could do something that proves that you don't have any principles whatsoever and makes you look radical and weird and crazy to the broad majority of Americans, but will make you look pure to your base, they're always gonna choose that second thing, and that's what they did here. So maybe in the end, he'll be forced out. They say, some of the Republicans who even voted for this say that he's a terrible liar. He'll be gone eventually before August recess, and that isn't that far off. It still remains to be seen. For now, though, on the off chance that George Santos is watching this program, I would just like to reiterate the call. You gotta get out of here. We've dealt with this enough. You gotta go. Anyway, with that said, we're gonna take our first break of the hour. When we come back, though, we have a lot to talk about, including Dianne Feinstein and why it is that she might not be receiving so much pressure from establishment Republicans to step down. We'll get to that and more after this. Before we launch into our block on Dianne Feinstein, I want to acknowledge San Diego J, who, you know what, San Diego J, if you've not already gotten a Blue Apron gift card, you just did. Email rewards@tyt.com with your first and last name as well as your handle, and we will set you up with one. Because San Diego J provided a fact check. Diane Emile Goldman was born June 22nd, 1933, age 89. The fact check apparently is true. Dianne Feinstein was 8.5 years old when Pearl Harbor was bombed. That is amazing. That could be amazing in a purely good, amazing way. Unfortunately, it has been tinged by the dark reality of where we're at with Dianne Feinstein, which we will supplement with new reporting starting now. You might have seen that just 2 days ago, Dianne Feinstein appeared to have no memory of the fact that she had been absent from the Senate for multiple months. I'm not 100% sure about that. There is an interpretation that she was just being salty, but I understand the concerns about what she actually said. And coming out of that interaction, some of those who've been calling for her to step down from her position as California senator are reiterating that, with a friend of the show, Representative Ro Khanna, saying, I have a lot of respect for Senator Feinstein and am wishing her the best in her return and recovery. That being said, I stand by my call for her to resign. And I appreciate that. It's very easy, I think, maybe to say it when she's gone, but once she's back, well, I guess we'll just let her be led around the halls of the Senate. So some people appear to be backing off from the pressure, but not Ro Khanna, and I appreciate that. But you might notice that there isn't a ton of pressure, certainly coming from people other than progressives. Where are the establishment Democrats who should be wanting the establishment Democrat President Biden to get as much as he can out of that period. She is standing between him and that. So why aren't they bothered by that? Well, Politico has some pretty interesting reporting that adds a new wrinkle to this story. Did you know that Feinstein's primary caregiver, not in a medical sense, but in terms of helping her out in her job, is Nancy Pelosi's daughter? I had not known that. So not only did Nancy Karine Prouda escort Feinstein around Capitol Hill last week, she was again at her side yesterday, helping aides surround the senator in a Capitol hallway as a reporter tried to speak to her, so sort of corralling her. Multiple people familiar with the arrangement say it's only the most visible part of a quiet but critical role the Pelosi family has played in helping to take care of the ailing senator, both when she's in Washington as well as back in San Francisco. Now, why would this potentially matter? It's noteworthy. Here is why it might potentially matter. And it's not about the future career of Dianne Feinstein at the end of the day. It's about whoever is gonna come after her, which has been part of this conversation for months, but this makes that conversation, I think, take on a new significance. So Pelosi, you need to know, has endorsed Representative Adam Schiff to be her successor. That is Pelosi's longtime protege, former handpicked House Intelligence Committee chair. She wants him to take over. Now, he's already incredibly well known in California. He has a $15 million cash advantage over his nearest competitor. But here's the issue. If she were to use her position to do the ethical thing, which is to ask Feinstein to step aside so the Democrats could get the job done, well then we would not immediately get Adam Schiff. What we would get is whoever Gavin Newsom picked. And Gavin Newsom has already promised that he would put a black woman into that position. It is believed that it could potentially be Representative Barbara Lee, although Gavin Newsom is a slippery little devil, so I don't know why people are assuming that's necessarily the way it would go. And then whoever that is, whether it's Barbara Lee or a different black female politician here in California, would be then running for re-election as the incumbent. They would have more name recognition, and that significantly imperils the chance of Adam Schiff to take over. Now, of course, that also represents that Nancy Pelosi is not interested in increasing diversity in this Senate seat. She just wants Adam Schiff because she likes Adam Schiff. But if that is the reason that is being given for establishment Democrats to not put pressure on her, so we get stuck with her, a senator who seems barely able to do the job, barely able to say what day it is, and could still be risking the judicial nominations of President Biden, then that's distressing, I will say. Miranda, what do you think?
Yeah, for a woman who seems to not know where she is or when she is a lot of the time and can't be let out of her office unsupervised, she has no business making decisions for the American people or anyone else really, I personally think. And so I think it could be the Barbara Lee thing. I think there's definitely some validity to that, but I also think that very related to the Santos story, if you require someone to step down because of inadequacy or inability to do their job properly, then that sets a precedent, right? And a precedent that they don't want, and they don't want to give up any seats, they don't want to give up any power. I mean, you can make the argument that Biden's quite old, and sometimes it seems like maybe he doesn't quite know where he is or what he is doing. And so I think that there could be validity to either one of those things, but also just give me Barbara Lee. Just give us Barbara Lee. That's all we really want. And I think it's a shame that this woman is however old and cannot live the rest of her time. Like she should retire, live the rest, just take it off. Just live the rest of your time in retirement, on the beach somewhere, just relaxing. You don't need to be casting votes or whoever is, holding your hand over the button, casting the votes for you.
Yeah, I like having obviously lived through Ruth Bader Ginsburg, my gut is saying simply waiting to give Adam Schiff a better chance seems like the worst case scenario. But is that really the worst case scenario? Perhaps in the current political context, we need to get more creative. They are wasting just enough time for Gavin Newsom to be beaten for re-election by Scott Baio or something, and then he chooses some Republican to take the seat. I don't know, that's my fear. We don't know for sure how much of this is political speculation. I mean, the relationship is there between the Pelosi's and Dianne Feinstein. We know that they deny it. Aaron Bennett, spokesman for Pelosi, says anyone who knows Senator Feinstein knows that her service in the Senate is entirely her own decision, and Speaker Pelosi would never suggest otherwise. That doesn't mean anything. By the way, The Adam Schiff thing, I'm not even saying that has anything to do with Dianne Feinstein's thinking. I don't think Dianne Feinstein necessarily cares at all who takes over for her. I think she cares about her. She has main character syndrome. That's what I think. But that could totally be why Pelosi is not putting pressure on her. And maybe the pressure would be irrelevant. Maybe if Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden and all of the centrist Democrats or whatever were to constantly be attacking Feinstein to step down, maybe she wouldn't do it anyway. But at least they'd be on our side, and they're not doing that. They're not doing that. Anyway, with that said, oh God, the hour is racing by. We have to move on to the D block. There's another judge who apparently has no idea what's going on for much the same reason as Dianne Feinstein. Maybe we can get to that later in the week, but for now, why don't we move on to this? Despite his many other troubles, one thing that Ron DeSantis has going for his presidential aspirations is that he has received quite a few endorsements, even before he's announced, from GOP officials in Iowa, New Hampshire, as well as Florida. Now, Florida, you might expect, he's the governor of Florida, but Iowa and New Hampshire, incredibly important primary states for the Republicans. So because of perhaps all of this, Donald Trump and his team not happy about these endorsements going out. He's getting more, by the way, but he wants all of them. So he put out this statement saying, it's no surprise that Ron DeSantis and his political cronies have continued to terrorize the Florida legislature with the threat of his veto pen if they don't acquiesce to his demand to endorse his candidacy. There are some brave legislators who've stood up to the DeSantis' swamp-like behavior and resisted his intimidation tactics in order to do what is right for Florida and the country. Those who he can't control, including almost the entirety of the Florida federal congressional delegation, have endorsed President Trump because he's the only candidate who can beat Joe Biden and take back the White House. So look, I don't even know what the claim they're making is, that he's threatening Florida legislators to not support their legislation if they don't endorse him. I don't put that past him. I just haven't seen any evidence that it's true. But the part about this, Miranda, that I find so just awesome is they're saying, look at Ron DeSantis. He's threatening people to make them endorse him. Donald Trump would never do that. He would never wield intimidation to get people to support him. He would never wreck people's careers if they speak out against him. That's my favorite part about the news today, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, well, it's typical Republican behavior. You'd say someone else is doing something when you yourself are doing that exact thing. And what's great about it is the voter base definitely falls for it every time. And I think that as confusing as this is worded, it doesn't matter because it has the buzzwords in it, like swamp, like terrorize, can't control, like all these things that they're just, no one who's voting for Trump and wants to vote for Trump actually has to know what any of this means. They just have to pick up these buzzwords in relation to Ron DeSantis, and Trump is just good to go. To me, it feels like I'm watching Trump and DeSantis wrestle in a mud pit, and like the trashy part of my brain that likes reality TV is like, yeah, they're fighting, let them go at it. But yeah, it's just word dumping and associating certain words with DeSantis's name. It is hilarious to watch Trump bash DeSantis over and over again, despite the fact that DeSantis has not yet even announced that he is running for president. And the ads, I have to say, continue to be hilarious for me at least.
Yeah. The only fact check I would make is it's not a mud pit they're wrestling in, that's chocolate pudding. DeSantis had that in his rider. So
my mistake.
By the way, on the endorsements, the Trump campaign has been hyper focused on endorsements recently, but not just the endorsements that Ron DeSantis and Trump are getting, but the endorsements that they're giving. So Trump bleated this, congratulations to a star. He put it in quotation marks, like he doesn't believe it. You're the one saying it. Well, just say it. Just say they're a star. I don't believe they're a star. I was gonna do this. Why did you do it? Anyway, he says in Kentucky, Daniel Cameron, who easily won the Republican nomination for governor, he had my complete and total endorsement. The sanctimonious back candidate came in a distant third. Ron's magic is gone. He also lost shockingly in Jacksonville last night. Mayor. Thank you. Yes, it was the mayor's race. He's not wrong there. He's awful, but he's not wrong there. Jacksonville did go to a Democrat for the first time in a very, very long time. That is true. And the person that he endorsed did win. Again, doesn't mean they won because you endorse them. Donald Trump is generally very careful with his endorsements, and he endorses tons of people who are obviously going to win so they can jack up the percentage that win. Like, we can all see through this, but he's trying to point out there's a reason he's focusing on this. I think he would tweet it no matter what, but the midterm elections make this, I think, a bigger part of his strategy, because one of the things that Donald Trump probably feels he needs to overcome in this primary is the valid perception that he's terrible for the party, not just him singularly. He's bad for the party, and he puts forward candidates that are terrible and that are going to lose. That definitely happened in 2022. Lots of Republicans are worried that if he's still in charge of the Republican Party going into 2024, that they'll have another experience of that it might ruin their chances of taking over the Senate. So he needs to pretend at least that he's a bigger star maker than Ron DeSantis, even if it's not true.
Yeah, that was exactly the point that I was going to make, is that, man, that last election looked so bad for Trump when so many Trump-backed candidates lost their elections. And so I think that that's definitely what he was trying to do here. He's like, no, look, I pick good candidates. And it kind of reminds me of Tom from Parks and Rec when he picks whoever is just clearly going to win. And so he supports everybody until he finds out who the real winner is. And then that's the one he supports. And so I think that's definitely what Trump is doing. I also love that Trump tweets, or Truth Socials, I guess, like, one of my old professors, like the ones who don't quite know how to use technology and they use a lot of ellipses, and you're like, why are you speaking to me like that? And so the quotes for star, I don't think he quite knows how to properly use those. And so I think he's maybe using them for emphasis, but it definitely does not read that way.
Yeah, maybe he thinks it's to bold the word. I don't think so. Anyway, the only win in all of this for Ron DeSantis, though, is that Donald Trump did call him Ron instead of Rob. So that's good. He used your actual name, Rob. Also, by the way, just really fast, Ron DeSantis is apparently planning to begin his campaign next week, people believe. So like, put it in your calendar, it's next week. And then like you read the articles, the next paragraph is, yeah, but he often changes his mind. Well, then it's like, then why are you even mentioning this at this point? What's the difference? I do want him to run though. I am very worried that he's not gonna run, because then, I mean, that was gonna be like the show of the fall for me. So I hope that it does happen, but we'll have to see. Okay, with that said, we've got important news coming up in the last bit of the hour, including TikTok actually being full on banned by a state. We're gonna talk about it after this. Okay, everybody, we got some stories also coming up later on today. Our Tier 3 member hangout on YouTube is gonna be happening, so I hope you all show up for that. Also, stick around for the aftermath, because we're gonna be doing a TDR special feature, diving deep into the history and current status of the AR-15, so I hope to see you all for that as well. But first, this. Governor of Montana, Greg Gianforte, has now signed a law making Montana the first state to officially ban TikTok. And I don't mean the way some other states have banned TikTok for government employees or something like that. No, this is just a ban. The idea is it's gonna be gone. Who knows if that actually happens, we'll speculate, but that's the goal. He says, to protect Montanans' personal and private data from the Chinese Communist Party, I have banned TikTok in Montana. Of course, I feel the need to point out that they have said that there is no access to that information. It's the US subsidiary. You can believe or not believe that, whatever. He clearly doesn't. So the legislation would prohibit the operation of TikTok in Montana by the company, by users. Internet service providers can't offer it. Mobile application stores can't allow you to download it. So that's obviously targeted at the Google Play Store and Apple as well. The Montana DOJ will be responsible for investigating any potential violations of the ban. ISPs and companies that violate it would face a $10,000 fine per day for each violation, while residents would not be fined. This is sort of similar to the way that they're trying to outlaw abortion, which is they do a radical thing, but they put it not on the person doing it, hoping that like we won't seem radical then. It's still an incredibly radical move to ban it. Look, I think it's a complicated topic, and thank God I'm not the person who has to figure out exactly what should be done. But this seems like a pretty fast, pretty over the top reaction. What do you think, Miranda? Are you a talker? What do you think?
I mean, I have a TikTok for the sake of being able to look at TikToks for my job. I don't post on there and I don't really search on there. But I do see them on the Instagram For You page. So it's basically like being on TikTok, but just like 2 weeks later. My first question when I saw this was the enforcement of the ban of TikTok in Montana. So if I'm traveling through Montana, and I already have the app, or there's just it seems like a really weird, strange thing to enforce, and so I'm curious to see how they're going to try and do that. I think they're trying to implement it on the 1st. But getting to the heart of the topic, you're right. It's controversial and it's a very complicated topic, and I also don't know what the exact right move is. But this seems like a way to prevent people from seeing information, from sharing information. A lot of people make money off of TikTok these days. And so it seems like a very over the top censorship move to me.
Yeah. It also seems like for young people, for tech savvy people, it feels like you'd be able to get around it with a VPN or jailbreaking your phone, downloading it outside of the app store, probably even easier than that. I probably don't even know some of the clever ways they would get around it. But this does actually, by the way, unless they change it, they could change the law. But immediately I thought, have you seen the movie Air? I was talking about it on the show yesterday. It's about the development.
No.
Okay, so it's about the development of Air Jordans or whatever. And one of the like fun little things, it's in the trailer, so it's not a spoiler, is the NBA required that like 51% of the shoe had to be white or something at that point. And they wanted to make one that had more red to appeal to Michael Jordan. And they were like, if we don't, we'll be fined $5,000 per game. And so one of them is like, so we'll pay it. Think about this. ISPs will all be fined unless they ban TikTok. But one ISP could be like, you know what? We stand for free speech. We stand for you getting access to what you want. We're the ISP that's gonna pay for it as an advertisement so that you'll come to that ISP. I feel like you could totally do that. I feel like Apple and Google could definitely afford the $10,000. They'll probably change it to jack up the prices or whatever, but that would be my assumption of how that would play out.
Yeah, $10,000 is not, that's not much. It's a drop in the bucket really when it comes to advertisement for, you're right, like Apple or Google.
Yeah, and also like, look, we're gonna get into the addiction stuff in just one sec, but there are a lot of related issues with social media, with people's addictions, their phones, with AI, all this stuff. Like everybody's really like, what do we do? So let's just do something crazy. But like, could you at least briefly think, does this even solve the problem? Let's say that you succeed and TikTok goes bye-bye because of something Greg Gianforte signed. It's not gonna happen, but let's say that it did. Vine was around, they got rid of that. Like, there will just be another app. It'll just spread really fast. Like, this is not a societal solution to a problem. This is a temporary technological stopgap. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, well let's move to that addiction side. So according to a new report, nearly half of adolescent girls on TikTok report that they feel addicted to it or that they use the platform for significantly longer than they intend to. That's according to a new report looking into the effects of social media on different aspects of American society. TikTok, by the way, leads the way in total time on its platform across all of these, with girls who use it logging more than 2.5 hours a day. Jeez. But YouTube is only a bit behind at nearly 2.5 hours a day. I apologize to all of the adolescent girls obsessed with TDR and me making you watch the live show every day and wrecking your day. Anyway, Snapchat and messaging apps are at about 2 hours. Instagram at 92 minutes. There's no time left to even sleep after all that. Anyway, many of the girls surveyed aged 11 to 15 use multiple platforms each day, but probably like popping back and forth. I don't think that they're sitting for 90 minutes, then 90 minutes, then 90 minutes. They're probably using all of those. Anyway, most girls did describe the effect of social media on people their age as positive, but about 1 in 4 use TikTok, Instagram, and Snapchat experience negative social comparisons and feel pressured daily to show the best versions of themselves. And of course, the best versions probably are not the actual version of themselves. So there's a lot of related issues there. Miranda, what do you think?
I think that I'm really glad that when I was in high school, we didn't have social media apps like Instagram and TikTok, because I can 100% foresee this having been a problem for someone like me. I have actually done quite a bit of research into social media and its effects on mental health, especially young women, and the pressure to look a certain way, the pressure to act a certain way. And everyone on Instagram and TikTok, they're all posting their highlight reel, and they're all editing their photos. And I think it was in France maybe where they were thinking about or trying to pass a law where if you edited a photo you could be fined on social media if you edited a photo of your face or your body. And so this is a real issue. But then getting back to the ban, you're right. It's also not solving the root cause of the issue. It's not solving the mental health crisis, and it's not helping girls feel better about themselves. They can just go somewhere else. It's the internet, it's vast. And you're right, if they get rid of this, it'll just be something else. And so I don't think barring people from social media is the way to do anything like this. But it's definitely something to look out for. I just posted on my Instagram story the other day, this guy, he makes his Instagram off of finding how people have edited their photos that don't look like they're edited. And then he explains to you how they've done it. And so it can show you this isn't real. And it's a lot of influencers, it's a lot of fitness people. And so this is definitely a very real issue, and we're not addressing the root cause of it at all.
Yeah, 100%. I am very worried about a lot of that. And I understand the desire to want to sign one bill that fixes it. That is going to be very difficult because again, there are multiple platforms. There are incredibly sophisticated ways to manipulate photos, and presenting the best version of yourself, which is the best invented version, isn't just about modifying images. It's which images you put up. It's all of the experiences you go through that are not reflected online because that might reflect poorly. It's curation, it's artifice, it's all of those things, and that there's no technological solution to a problem that is societal, cultural, and psychological. Like ideally, I would hope that we could start to provide some sort of training to kids to understand this stuff. My fear is that that is a losing battle, that either people would think it would be impossible to overcome the human urge to be popular and to be seen as attractive and to be seen as interesting and all that, that they might not even try, or that in fact it might not be able to be overcome, that everybody does want, like even to their own self-destruction, they want to be seen as interesting or clever. I mean, look at Elon Musk, at the damage he's doing to himself because he just wants people to think he's funny.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and the more you try, it seems like the worse off those people, when you know those people in real life, the worse off they are. The people who seem like they have the absolute best life on social media tend to feel the worst about themselves. And I've seen people in public taking curated photos or videos for their content online, and the way they shut down afterwards is they're a completely different person and they seem miserable.
Yeah, and by the way, like I think I get why the focus is on young girls, and the data seems to show that like that's where the strongest effect is. But this sort of curation and creating a fake idea of your life, that is not just 12-year-old girls that are doing that. There are a lot of families on YouTube that like their whole thing is the brand of their family. Who the hell thinks that's what that family is like? Like they are putting on a performance. There are couples that are couples on YouTube or on Instagram or whatever. That's not what they're like. Like everybody's lying. That's what everybody is lying.
Everybody is lying. None of it is real.
Yeah,
social media is not reality at all.
I know, and look, I sometimes fear that I could be playing into it. I know a lot of people watch this and think, well, John's like 25, he's got it all together. No, I'm actually older than that. I know it's hard to believe, but I am several years older than that. And just anyway, I know some people are like, wait, it's bad to spend 90 minutes. I spend more than that watching TYT. No, like spending time on a platform can mean a lot of different things. Like, and by the way, not just YouTube, TikTok too. I don't spend 90 minutes on TikTok a day, but TikTok is not just people being hit in the face with basketballs. It's mostly that. But there's a lot of political content, there's news content, there's environmental content, there's sports content, there's all sorts of things. And so let's not stigmatize curiosity or news gathering or whatever. We're not interested in what's being watched, we're interested in the effect of what's being watched, I think. I can only speak for myself, but that's my thought. Anyway, I wish we had a lot more time to talk about this. Arguably, we can do it more in the future. But that is all the time we have for the first hour, all the time we have with Miranda. Miranda, it's been great to have you here. Where can people watch more of your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on TYT Breakdown on YouTube. I post there quite a bit. And if you're interested in non-news content, I do have a stream on Twitch. It's Bad Gamer Wyatt. So come watch me be bad at games and laugh at me.
Awesome. Everyone go laugh at her. Thank you, Miranda. Great to have you here. We got more coming up in the aftermath. I'll see you after this. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Iadarola. I'll see you soon.